Here is something by a philosopher called Budziszewski. Budziszewski became a Christian after being an atheist philosopher teaching in Texas. And he recounts something of his conversion along these lines. I have already noticed in passing that everything goes wrong without God. This is true even of the good things he has given us, such as our minds. One of the good things I've been given is a stronger than average mind. I don't make the observation to boast. Human beings are given diverse gifts to serve him in diverse ways. The problem is that a strong mind that refuses the call to serve God has its own way of going wrong. When some people flee from God, they rob and kill. When others flee from God, they do a lot of drugs and have a lot of sex. When I fled from God, I didn't do any of those things. My way of fleeing was to get stupid. Though it always comes as a surprise to intellectuals, there are some forms of stupidity that one must be highly intelligent and educated to achieve. God keeps them in his arsenal to pull down mulish pride, and I discovered them all. That is how I ended up doing a doctoral dissertation to prove that we make up the difference between good and evil and that we aren't responsible for what we do. I remember now that I even taught those things to students. Now that's sin. It was also agony. You cannot imagine what a person has to do to himself. Well, if you're like I was, maybe you can. What a person has to do to himself to go on believing such nonsense. St. Paul said that the knowledge of God's law is written on our hearts, our consciences also bearing witness. Quoted, you see, from these chapters. The way natural law thinkers put this is to say that they constitute the deep structure of our minds. That means that so long as we have minds, we can't not know them. Well, I was unusually determined not to know them. Therefore, I had to destroy my mind. I resisted the temptation to believe in good with as much energy as some saints resist the temptation to neglect good. For instance, I loved my wife and children, but I was determined to regard this love as merely a subjective preference with no real and objective value. Think what this did to my very capacity to love them. After all, if love is a commitment of the will to the true good of another person, how can one wills be committed to the true good of another person if he denies the reality of good, denies the reality of persons, and denies that his commitments are in any sense in his control? Visualize a man opening up the access panels of his mind and pulling out all the components that have God's image stamped on them. The problem is that they all have God's image stamped on them. So the man can never stop. No matter how many he pulls out, there is still more to pull. I was that man. Because I pulled out more and more, there was less and less that I could think about. But because there was less and less that I could think about, I thought I was becoming more and more focused. Because I believed things that filled me with dread, I thought I was smarter and braver than the people who didn't believe them. I thought I saw an emptiness at the heart of the universe that was hidden from their foolish eyes. But I was the fool. Listen, we've just come through the bloodiest century in human history. It is estimated that apart from war, we human beings have managed to bump off not fewer than 170 million fellow human beings, apart from war. We've lived through Auschwitz and Pol Pot and apartheid. Choose your own brand of sin in this country, in other countries. And we come to the beginning of the 21st century, and now we say, all it takes is we just love one another and tolerate one another and we'll all get along fine. God knows we need more genuine toleration. But I think that the biblical analysis of the heart being deceitful above all things and desperately wicked is a little closer to the bone. Have you ever been to Auschwitz? The little road outside the camp is still there, with the iron gates, and across the top the words, Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. And there, and 2 kilometers down the road, Birkenau with its ovens. The little courtyard where they shot, I don't know how many thousands. I had a friend who was converted there in southern Poland. He had been taught so much to hate the Germans that when he was genuinely converted and his heart was free of hate, he asked to be baptized in the river that runs just on the other side of the road from the entrance to Auschwitz. There, he said, I buried my hate. Because he glimpsed that the very hate that was operating in Auschwitz was operating in him against the people of Auschwitz. Where does that end? For the truth of the matter is, the fundamental evil is idolatry. It's not breach of law, exactly. It's idolatry. It is de-godding God. Anything, no matter how good in itself, that becomes of utmost importance to you becomes God to you. That's why the Apostle Paul can say, for example, that covetousness is idolatry. Because if you want something badly enough that that's what you think about, that's what you daydream about, that's what you fantasize over, that's what you plot to get, that becomes God for you. That's why covetousness is idolatry. Even good things can become idols. Pursuing education can be a very good thing. But if that is your whole self-identity, that's what you want the most, and you'll trample on other people to get there, and you don't care about anything else, or your parents, or your loved ones, or your family, or your kids, or anything else, just academic achievement, that's it. That's your self-identity. That becomes God for you. And at some point, it is de-godded God. That's idolatry. And all of human existence becomes a spectacular Vanity Fair of choices of idolatry. So that even in the good things we do, God speaks, and he says there is no one who does good. No, not one. Not one. And the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all of this ungodliness, this idolatry by which we suppress